Yo guys, welcome. All right, same deal as the first video for floor 101. Let's cover 102 very briefly here. This floor I think is a lot trickier, but it has a little bit of the same type of mechanic, which is poison abuse. So as you can see here, this time around we're running Kiris and Spectenny, as well as Tamarin and Lilius. So same deal as last time, guys. Ignore my face in the bottom left. This is just a recording I'm talking over, but this is the run that I did successfully. I think it took me about 4 legit tries, but unless you have the gear and info ready going into this, it can take you way more than that. And phase 2 especially can have a lot of RNG. So this floor can expect a lot of people to be frustrated with it, but hopefully this will help you out a little bit. And at the end, of course, I can go over, I'll show you exactly what these units are wearing, their stats, and then also some viable alternatives, as well as other team comps I've heard that work as well, okay? All right, let's get to it. So, here in the first phase, guys, against Captain Ricorous, it's Captain Ricorous, Specialty Change Hazel, and this big old robot you see in the back. The general gist of this rundown, if you run a similar comp to mine, which is poison debuffs, which I think most people, honestly guys, you probably should, just if you want to run this early without spending a lot of time and headache, run some poison for this boss fight, especially for 102. It's very difficult. So here's the rundown, TLDR, on how to make this very easy. You want to stack poisons on Ricorous. You want to keep the robot stunned because he does a ton of damage, either stunned or provoked. As you can see here, Lilius has a 2-turn provoke. Make sure she has 65% effectiveness. Keep an eye on the robot. There will be a time overlap, but before Lilius gets her S2 back, you want to use Spectenny's stun in between to keep it locked down, okay? Otherwise, you cycle between Kiris and Spectenny to keep poisons up on Ricorous. And there's another very important mechanic we need to talk about. Every time you hit Specialty Change Hazel, you'll see a buff pop up on Ricorous. Let's see if we can catch one here soon. You'll see a buff pop up on Ricorous that kind of, let's see, Lilius is about to hit Hazel. And on Ricorous, you're going to see it. You see that Watcher Gigantes. Watcher, is that how we say it? Watcher Gigantes buff pops up. And at 5 stacks of that, Captain Ricorous will give the entire battlefield. So our team as well, your team as well, will also get skill nullifier as well as his team. Why this is important is because Ricorous' S3 does a lot of damage, and more important than that, we're going to want this entire skill nullifier buff going into phase 2, okay? Because phase 2 is where it gets really tricky. This part, honestly, once you get the hang of it, much more simple. Keep the robot locked down, keep poisons on Ricorous, and constantly try and get that skill nullifier up from hitting Hazel, especially before Ricorous has his S3 ready, as you can see here, as well as having the skill nullifier up before phase 2. So it's a juggling act. Very simple though. There's a little bit of leeway and flexibility if you mess something up. Just try to keep the robot locked down and try not to kill Ricorous beforehand. Sometimes, guys, with the poisons and how it works, how many you hit, how many you don't hit, you may not be able to get a perfect 4 skill null up going into phase 2, but keep trying. Sometimes it will mean the difference between succeeding or failing. I think in this scenario, I'm going to only have a 3 skill null up. I think Kiris gets hit right before, but I did get attempts beforehand that had all 4. So it's possible, but not completely required, okay? Other than that, guys, another mechanic we need to talk about is in this floor, non-fire units will have their effectiveness reduced by 100. So that means my Kiris and Spectenny both have 160 plus effectiveness. You really want 165. I think my Spectenny has like 200. I way overkilled it. But my Kiris has 160, I believe. You really want to get that to 165, okay? I kind of just had a little bit less. I didn't want to change too much gear around. I just made it work with a 5% missing. On top of that, your CC'er, in which case, in this example, I'm using Lilius. I have her effectiveness at 65, okay? Before I was running at like 40, before I actually fixed it. But missing provokes here in phase 1, and possibly in phase 2, we'll go over that in a second, can mean the difference between success and failure, okay? Alright, I think that covers most of phase 1, guys. Remember, I'll talk about viable alternatives after we get through this. So So let's go ahead and start fast forwarding to the end of phase 1. You can see stacking some poisons up. I'm trying to make sure Captain Rookers does not die yet. Right here, guys, he gets very, very low. Not quite dead, and Kiris lost her skill nullifier like I mentioned earlier. A little bit unfortunate, but it is what it is. It's not going to stop me from canceling the run right here and there, although you could. But go ahead. I think you want to continue and try. And here we move into phase 2 with Celine. Now, guys, you're going to have to read Celine's skills for herself. Because I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I don't even remember off the top of my head what each... You see this one up here? It goes from 1, 2, 3, and it's going to depend... It depends on which unit of yours that Celine will hit. It's like it depends on max attack, max HP. I think one of them just says it's just hitting someone random. And then also anytime you use a non-attack skill, she does her blink counter attack. Okay. Let's go through the rundown of this fight. You start off with Kiris S3 and S1. As you can see, we're already doing major damage with the poisons. Lilius is nice to add hopefully extra poison procs, as you can see right there. On top of that, when Celine hits 50% or so, the cyclings will get really annoying. They're going to cleanse. I believe they can stun. They're going to ruin your day is the point. Now, I think in this scenario, I actually just managed to just poison her without worrying about the robots. But your mileage may vary. A nice thing, and in some of my previous attempts, I try to lock down whichever robot's going to go next, usually the gold one. You either Lilius Provoke or Specteni Stun. Both robots. While trying to keep that poison stacks up, okay? This is the most important part. You really, really need to kill Celine in a timely manner. Her damage is going to get out of hand eventually. Save Tama's S3. We'll show that in a little bit. Tama's S3, you want to just save for that burst potential area. Because really, up until then, as long as you get a little bit lucky, I think Celine hits my tank a lot here instead of hitting Kiris and Steny. You don't take too much damage in the beginning, okay? So get the poisons up. Try to get their dots ticking as high as possible with Kiris' S2. And then prepare for the post 50% phase. Simple until then, right? Takes a little bit of RNG. She gets chunked under 50 right there. Hits Lilius. And then the robots start going in. Now, I believe right here, I choose to hold my S3. Or do I use it right here? Let's find out. I'm trying to contemplate. I might just go ahead and burst since this poison stack, this entire poison stack is going to do a lot right here. So we're probably going to let it rip. Yes, we do. I held it beforehand all the way until this point, all the way from phase 1. Celine gets her little counterattack. She does crit, but the damage isn't too high. Remember, guys, on top of having a 165 effectiveness, go 0 attack if you're using a unit like Specteni, even Kiris, and just go poison. Poison's not relying on any of that, and all your damage is going to be coming from poison. So between the Tama heal, Steny took 2 hits from Celine, but since I have some HP and defense on her, we don't die just from that, okay? If your gear is a little bit less, things can get a bit dicier, but she's still relatively healthy. And just like that, guys, I didn't even need to CC the robots, but if you don't get as lucky with Lilius, bonus procs if Kiris misses a few hits here and there, if Steny doesn't land a poison, or you're running only 1 poison damage dealing unit, like I said, your mileage may vary and you may need to CC the robots, okay? So what I would suggest is, because it's most likely going to take you more than 1 attempt, just base it off how your run is going. I finished off the fight here with Arky, but let's say your runs don't go quite as well. You want to CC the robots post 50% while slowly maintaining the poisons. Now, if you get lucky like me and hit those early poison stacks, I believe we hit all 3 on Kiris, followed up with an S1. Steny got her S1 as well as Lilius got an S1 dual attack for Steny to get another poison. We upkept that with S2, meaning Celine just got absolutely destroyed. We Tama S3 to cycle everybody up, get some extra healing, and then that was all she wrote. Okay? So I made this attempt look very simple, but with some RNG, things can go very wrong. I do think poison is the best route for this. I don't have any other poison suggestions, but I have heard some other comps, and we'll get to that in just a second, okay? So here's the end. Get that sweet wyvern material, guys. I'm clapping in the bottom left because this did take me quite a few attempts. Even though it was like 5 attempts total, each attempt took a while, and yeah, it was quite the fiasco. All right, so let's pause this here, and I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys the gearing on these units exactly. All right, so I have it ready. First up, Curious. Like I mentioned, I'm missing 5% effectiveness. The speed, you don't need this high. I sort of was just taking some gear from my other units that I knew had similar stats to what I wanted. That way, when I swap it back, it's simple. But make sure her health and defense, guys, especially if you're using only a 5-star Curious. And you can use a 5-star Curious. I don't even mind Fully Awakened. I would suggest, though, you get Mola's maxed here. Or, not Mola's, but Skill Enhanced max here. For the 50% chance. It's going to be very, very important. As well as getting -1 turn cooldown here. And maxing out S3, okay? Go ahead and get the Stigma and the Catalyst you need. Max this out. Also, you could get extra health here on her Self-Imprint Concentration, but I didn't need it. Defense and health, so I didn't neglect it completely. This is actually fairly tanky for her being only 5 stars. I have a lot of speed, but like I mentioned, not required. And then you really want 165. Because remember, your non-fire units in this floor will have their effectiveness reduced by 100. So you may need to use an effectiveness ring. The reason I don't have 165 total is because I'm just, like I said, I stole gear from other units. So not even using an effectiveness ring, I could have had 5% more. Artifact, real fast. Sword of Judgment, guys. I don't think it matters too much what artifact you use. If you have a Sword of Judgment lying around that's leveled, go ahead and throw it on. It could add that extra poison stack you need to finish the boss in a very fast manner, like I said, because the faster you stack poisons, the less headache you're going to have in that second phase. Other than Sword of Judgment, though, you could also run Raynon's Memorandum. Let's see if I have one lying around here somewhere. This is the artifact I'm talking about. Anything really. Cursed Compass wouldn't work too well because I believe it's only 1 turn. But yeah, I would say Raynon's or Sword of Judgment off the top of my head. But I don't think it matters too much here. Just have something for the extra stats, and you know, you never know. Just slap something on that you think is beneficial, and it should help a lot. After Curious, what do we have? We had Spec Tenny. Right here, I'm running Sierra Ren, guys. You could also run... I'm trying to think. I don't think this one matters too much either, guys. Sierra Ren will give you some extra debuffs here. You don't really need debuff removal per se. And the damage is purely from poison, so we don't really need like Caladra, for example. So I think Sierra Ren is actually the nicest to get. If you don't have that, just like same scenario with Curious, it doesn't matter. Actually, just thought of this, guys. If you need some extra survivability, slap on a Proof of Valor. You could just test out a few things, guys. But if you do think you have the gear, go ahead and give yourself extra chances, just like I was using Sword of Judgment. Extra chances to land a defense or attack break. You know, any extra RNG to sort of smoothen out the runs, go ahead and give it a try. But I don't think there's any specific mandatory artifact. As for stats, I went 0 attack. I try to stack a lot of defense and health. You want speed boots on. The speed, not too important. Just make sure they're not slow as a snail. So I would say like 180 plus. And then effectiveness, like I mentioned, 165 plus, okay? I overkilled this. You don't need this much. After that, I got Tamarin. Which, you don't need Tama. But she does make things a lot easier in both phases. Potion Vial, I think, is the best. Ignore the effect resist, guys. That's not needed. Just make sure the most important part is the speed and the defense and health. I don't even think we really needed... You don't need any effectiveness for strips either. There's nothing really to strip. Just make sure she's tanky enough, because as you saw in the Selene phase 2, random hits go around flying, and you want to make sure you're tanky enough to land that. I really like Potion Vial, though. But you can run things like Rod of Amaryllis. Really just whatever you feel like. And our last option, what was our last unit, guys? It was Benny, Dizzy, Tama, and Lilius. Lilius, you just need 65 effectiveness, and then just make her as tanky as possible. You could potentially run Aureus, but there are some scenarios in phase 2, I think, where the damage is a lot, and if your health is lower, you may take too much damage. I think Adamant is a nice in-between where you don't have to worry about Lilius dying too early. And also reducing damage from Curious, Thenny, and Tama. Okay, so 65% effectiveness. Lots of bulk, because she takes quite a few hits in the beginning there. Alright guys, real fast, alternate suggestions. If you let's break down my comp and talk about alternates to that in place of I think the only required one right now is Kiris. You want the poisons. You could also, instead of running Spectenny, let's say you don't have Spectenny in ML5, you can run Fire Shuri, who has poisons. Instead of Tama, you can probably just run... You could honestly probably just run any other healer. Akades, Momo, maybe Dien, but I'm worried that her healing, even with a Rod of Amaryllis, may not be enough. Your mileage may vary. I think just try any Soul Weaver. If you have Tam, of course, though, chuck her in. Overall, she's the best because of CR push. And for the tank, guys, SC Raws can work. Anything with dual attacks. But also, keep in mind, you might want a little bit of... You want some crowd control at least for the first phase, the robots, and potentially the second phase robots as well, unless your damage is extremely high. Like in my scenario with the poisons. You get lucky with poisons and just kill Celine before the robots get to do anything. But the extra dual attack and the provoke is very, very nice. You want some CC lockdown. So if you're replacing, let's say, Spectenny with Fire Shuri, you may want to look for some kind of tank that also has some CC capabilities. Okay, so Lily Springs everything, but there are other options. You can use SC Raws. Just be careful. You might be lacking too much crowd control. Other than that, guys, Kiris, I mentioned, is the only mandatory one. I have seen some people have success with lockdown comps, so you ignore the healer and you run triple CC and CR pushback. So things like Fire Litica, SC Wanda. Take some other crowd control, and just like we covered in the same... It's the same strategy. You lock down the robot. You would lock down SC Hazel in turn 1. Load up the poisons on Ricarus, and then move on to phase 2, in which case you are locking down both robots from the get-go and just maintaining poisons onto Celine. Now, I think there's more RNG involved in that. If you get hit too many times on the wrong units with no healer, you're going to have less room for error. But I do think that if you don't have healers or the right tanks, that is another viable alternative. So, CC and CR pushback with no healer, and you still need Kiris though, okay? You need Kiris for the poisons, guys. All right, I think that about covers it. Guys, we're gonna do Abyss 103 and 104 on stream tomorrow, maybe even higher if we can do it. So if you can, guys, I haven't plugged this in a while. Check out my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/car6. I try to stream every single day around, my schedule's been changing, but around 11 a.m. CST up until 3 to 4 CST as well, okay? We would love to have you. Come say hi and let me know you came from the YouTubes. And yeah, guys, leave me some comments. Any other viable alternatives? I would love to hear them. Tell me how your runs have been going. And thank you as always so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out, y'all.